Good morning, third grade. Good morning, Zion. Good morning, Carrie. Good morning, Nia. Hello, good morning. Good morning, Peyton. Good morning, Bryce. Hello, good morning, Jordan. Good morning, Nari. Good morning, Brian. Good morning, Autumn. And good morning, Sanaa. For today's history lesson, we're going to be reading about the Wright brothers, Wilbur, and Orville. So let's turn our history books to page 360. Now I'm just going to go over some major points about these two brothers. Now, as we know, they created the first airplane. Okay? Now, for hundreds of years, people have been curious about flying. And it was said, this is a story, 4,000 years ago, a Chinese leader, he strapped 47 rockets to his chair to see how high it flew. Okay? Now, let's talk about the two brothers from Dayton, Ohio, the Wright brothers. Now, their father, he was a circuit riding preacher, and from his trips, he would bring them toys. Now, one trip, he brought them a new toy, and it was basically a wind-up toy that flew in the air. And the boys, they were so interested with this toy that to the point that they built their own copies of the toy and made even larger ones. Now let's talk about Orville. Orville, right? He began a printing business. He made his own printing press out of the spare part machines that he found, and he started printing his own newspapers called the West Side News. Now, when Wilbur saw that his brother needed help, of course he volunteered. Now, Wilbur and Orville spent most of the time together, basically thinking, generating ideas. Basically thinking, what do you think? How do you think this would work? How can we make this better? Those are always questions that they ask each other. Now, as time moved on, mainly bicycles are the common means of transportation. There weren't that many cars. So, of course, the Wright brothers created their own bike shop where they repaired bikes and then created bikes of their own design. Now, later on, Orville, he became very ill. Now, his brothers, when he spent time recovering, his brother basically read him about a man in Germany creating a glider. Then a light bulb went off, and they started working on ways to basically create their glider. And they used the failed attempts and basically lessons from others how to perfect their glider. Knew they needed to find a good location. So basically somewhere that's big enough that won't basically harm anyone else, basically not a lot of trees, basically like a big open area. So they needed a place, like I said, with few people. So they reached out to someone for the perfect spot in Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. They found a spot down there. Okay? Now that's where they brought that glider to North Carolina along with other supplies. Each flight could be considered a success because the Wright brothers learned new things. So just for example, the flight might not took off. They basically learned from each lesson. They basically gained a skill. But on October 23rd, 1902, they finally broke the world record for the longest glider flight. And this just a year later, they make their attempt for the first airplane. On December 14th, 1903, after designing and perfecting the airplane, the weather was just right. They would see if it could fly. And they flipped the coin and Wilbur run. He would get to fly the airplane. The first attempt failed, but they were not upset. They were not discouraged. Now, on December 17th, 1903, that's when the Wright Flyer 1 had been repaired and it was time to try again. And this one Orville got to try. Notice, it slid. It didn't have wheels like the planes had today, so it slid down off the ramp to take off. And this time it worked. Orville was the first person to successfully pilot an engine-powered airplane. It flew for 12 seconds. That's very interesting. Now, 12 seconds doesn't seem like a long time, but for them, that was a major achievement because this has never been done before. Okay? Now, Wilbur Wright flew the next and made the longest flight of the day. So this time his brother went. He was in the air for 49 seconds and went about 852 feet. That's about a little bit longer than 2 football fields. Now, after these successful flights, the Wright brothers did not need the sandy shores of Kitty Hawk. So they moved all their experiments to Huffman Prairie. That's somewhere closer to their home. That's where they continued to test and experiment. And in 1908, the Wright brothers were ready to show the world their achievements. And that's when Wilbur, he took his plane to Paris to perform so people could see the airplane. Orville basically took his place to Virginia, his glider to Virginia, and that's what the army could see. And actually, Theodore Roosevelt actually got to see as well. And after that traveling and showing the world their plane, that's when they returned to America and they received the medals for Congress from the Smithsonian Institute. Now the brothers, they finally moved back home, returned back home to Ohio to start the Wright Airplane Company. That's when they built airplanes and trained pilots to fly them. However, 3 years later, Wilbur he became sick and he passed away. And that's where basically Orville he did not want to work without his brother, so he sold his company for $1 million. Now back then, $1 million is a lot of money. Now Orville he didn't work with planes anymore, but he did make friends with people who flew airplanes and worked with planes. And he even used to write personal letters to Amelia Earhart. And she was a famous female pilot. And during his lifetime, Orville got to see jet planes and also witness a plane flying faster than sound.